biological males, biological females, whatever gender, whatever
We might
sexual
have offended a
preference,
lot of people today, Brian.
whatever.
It is possible.
We meant no offense. I'm speaking
No.
for you also because we meant just to have a good, deep conversation. Genesis Nation, welcome again. I am super, super excited for this conversation and very interested in Dr. Lauryn Brunclik. It is, I got that right,
You
correct?
nailed it. You
All
nailed it,
right,
Brian.
cool. So you'll please, when you look at can I call you Lauren? Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, great, please. Perfect. So when you look at Doc's name, you'll see that it's a Z. It's pronounced with a Z. So make sure if you're going to call her for a conversation or a consultation, please make sure you say that right. I'm really excited to dive into you and what you've created here, because when we had our initial conversation, it was one, I'm intrigued because of what you're putting out there. So your podcast, She Slays the Day. Just the
Mhm.
word, just the word slay is a, I'm older than you. We're in different generations. I think you're a millennial, right?
I'm millennial, very millennial.
Okay,
Yes.
cool. So I'm very Gen X, like Pearl Jam, Nirvana, like that's my
Yep.
thing. So we are in different generations, and it's really cool to, I was a chiropractor for 20 years. You've been a chiropractor for how long?
13. Yep.
13. All right. So even though it's like similar years, we're totally different
Yes.
generations. And even the word slay is something that like my kids and your generation use. I like, I'm just learning how to use it. It's such a stretched word. It's like multiple entendre, not even double entendre. So
Well, if I
um
had known the podcast was going to be that successful, I probably would have thought more about the name, but I just kind of picked something. So I'm like, well, shit, now I'm kind of stuck with this.
well, it fits because your topic of conversation typically is about women in chiropractic. And those are two topics I'm interested in.
Mhm.
Women intrigue me, and I'm interested as a chiropractor. So I really want to, like, if you can just tell us how did you start this? Like, how did it get going?
So I was coaching for Epic at for a while, for a couple of years, and really enjoyed my monthly coaching calls with chiropractors. My personality loves solving day-to-day issues. Like one, whether it's what my therapist is helping me ask people if they want me to solve it before. Because one of like my funnier stories is I was at like a hot dog, like it's called the Weenie Wagon, but it's just like a food truck, right? And this is a small town. And so I'm like waiting. They're very, very busy, but like where you order and pick up were the same like spot, and it's congested and it's just like not a good flow. And I see they have this like back window like back there. And so I'm like, while they're just working their butts off trying to help, I'm like, have you guys ever thought about having pickup in the back? Like, I think that would help this. So my favorite part of coaching chiropractors was just like the day-to-day, like, how do I communicate this to my patients? What am I doing wrong to not get people at my events? Like, and I just love the taking action and brainstorm. So I, for whatever, 2019 kind of came, and I just kind of felt like I had done my time with Epic and needed to do something else. And so I left. And at the time I was training for half marathons. And so I was running a lot. And when I was running, ideas would come. And so I'd come back from a run and I'd tell my husband, like, okay, what if we, and my husband has learned that like I'm an ideas person. So he doesn't rain on my parade. He just like lets it kind of sit. And if it's a good one, it'll actually take action. Or, if by the next day there's a new idea, we just let that past one go. And so I was obviously for about a
Like
month.
the storm that can come in
Yeah,
and stop.
we just
Yes,
let it. If she's really excited about this one, she'll bring it up again. But you'll just ask
got
like,
it.
huh, interesting. And so for about a month, it was really obvious that I felt like I was supposed to be doing something. And honestly, that was a big part of why I left Epic. Was like, felt like I was supposed to be doing something and this wasn't it. And I missed giving people advice. I missed that part of the coaching. And so one day I came back from a run and I was like, what if we started a podcast? And he's like, okay, say like just, sure, 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 sure. And it was like, and people can write in and I can answer their questions. And he's like, okay. So I start with, I go like just online and like how to start a podcast. And, there's like a free 10-day email thing I got on somebody's lead magnet. And so email one is like your niche. And I was like, yep, got it. Your next day, email two, I think was like your name. And so I'm like, all right, okay, got it. Sure. Email three now then got to technology. And I was like, oh, I don't know any of this stuff. And so I just forwarded it to
Yeah.
I'm like, now I don't know. It's like talking about software and microphones. And I'm like, I'm tapping
That's the
out.
hard part. Yep.
So I forwarded it to my husband who was working in our downstairs office at the time. And about 20 minutes later, he comes up with a handful of microphones and he's like, okay, well, we already have Audition because that's a part like that was like the recording thing. And then here's the microphone that they recommend. And he had it on. I was like, oh, so you can solve this? And he's like, yeah. So it was just like the steps kept lining up in place. And we started an Instagram account to tell people like, hey, I'm going to start this in a month. You should listen. And then it just like week one, right out of the gates, we had like 1,200 downloads, which is crazy for a podcast.
Yeah. And so not typically, but the focus is women chiropractors.
Yeah, it started
Chiropractic
that way.
women, and where is it evolving to? Because I mean, like I look at you and you've already like told me you're a wife, you're a chiropractor, business owner, multiple business owner, creator, ideation person. So like you're
Yeah.
wearing multiple hats. Are you a mother as well?
Yeah. Yep.
All
Two
right. So
kids.
just add, okay. So add more stuff to your pocket. So
Okay. So it started as a podcast for female chiropractors. And I think it's because it started because there was a lot of conversation around women being 50% of the profession, but dealing with a lot of burnout. What I will say is now that I look back on 2019, I think that there were a lot of female chiropractors that felt like, yes, women needed help, but that was kind of what we needed to do. Like it needed to be like men wouldn't take my advice. So therefore, I'm just going to say I'm only for women. And what I've noticed amongst like just my other colleagues, females doing coaching programs and courses, they've also kind of transitioned from this I'm for women only to now in 2023 or 2024 whenever this airs. It's like actually what we're finding is the male millennials and the male Gen Z are dealing with a lot of the same burnout that women are. And so about 85.
It's a human condition.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I think through the years I've had, a lot of guys DM me on Instagram. Well, that sounds terrible. A lot of male chiropractors being like, I know the show's not for me, but I want you to know that I really resonated with this week's. And it was like looking at like, yeah, sometimes we talked about vaginas and boobs and stuff like that, but like ultimately these were human things. These were
Totally.
chiropractic issues.
And it helps for like men to lean into their femininity and understand females in a way that they may not have. And also like I looked at what you were just saying with your husband and can dig into relationships because we all have, whether you're single and it's a romantic relationship, dating life or married life, you guys are in business together, you and your husband, obviously he helps you do this.
Yep.
I don't know the full breadth of it, but
oh yeah, he's everything. I'm only the talent.
all right. So like you're the relational one and he puts it all together so that you can sit at the microphone and go and do what you're good at. So that's a piece of it as well. Like how do you, because myself personally, like I went through divorce because I was working 60, 70, 80 hours, burning myself out. That happened to me. Now, do you find that older generations are now starting to listen to you and are they dropping into your DMs as well, or they're just not as receptive?
Well, so I'm 37. So older generations are really like the 40-year-olds. Yes, absolutely. Because, I'm talking about things like, hey, I don't I don't want to burn out. I have no intention of working 60 hours a week. I don't even work 40 hours a week in my chiropractic. I work way more, but you know,
Doing other
half it's
things.
in other things that,
Yeah.
allow just my freedom and things like that. Because I'm a little bit of a workaholic, but like it was I don't want to say suffocating feeling, but that's kind of what it is like it's the brick and mortar aspect of chiropractic. Like I love chiropractic,
When you get
obviously.
trapped by those four
But
walls.
you're
Yeah.
really like, what are your hours that you are going to be there for people? And I'm like, oh, but what if like I want to go to Costa Rica? And it's like, well, then you have to close your clinic.
Yeah.
And so a lot of the 40-year-olds for sure, they're like, oh, hey, yeah, I don't have another 20 years in me. Like, how can I start getting more freedom? The 50-year-olds are already like, listen, I got my plan. I've done this long enough. I'm on my exit strategy. And then the 60-year-olds are still kind of regurgitating a lot. Like this is not an overcast statement, but like a lot of the 60-year-old men are still pushing a lot of the like, you just got to work. You just got to work because a lot of the 6-year-olds are still coaching.
Well,
Um,
if you bring up the word burnout to the old guard, that's what I call it.
yeah, that's
It's
a
like,
good,
right. So I'm in the middle now, right? I've
yeah.
got, the 67-year-old chiropractors. I'm not 50 yet. I'm almost there. I'm in my 40s, and I've got like 20 and
Yeah.
30-year-olds who are, coming up behind me, and it's really interesting to see that. But maybe it was because we endured the pandemic and
Mhm.
whatever had happened there. There's a shift in consciousness,
Mhm.
in a lot of different directions, but also like work ethic is, there
Oh,
is, and I don't like the
I
term
rip on Gen
work.
Z a lot on my podcast accidentally. I'm like, I love you guys. And like, I feel like just each generation is kind of looking and going, I don't want that. But then your generation always looks at the one younger and go like, okay, like,
You gotta
I
actually
know
work to
you
get
want
there.
freedom, but you do have to make some money. Like
Right. And
you do.
you gotta actually work to get to like vice president, or like you gotta do the
Yes.
work to own the
Yeah.
clinic. You
Like,
can't just like step in and it's there. And
yes.
it's, you
Yes, like
build it,
I
it will come,
hustled
it's
my
gone.
ass off.
Yeah.
I hustled my ass off to build the clinic for a few years. And that, like, I'm like, I don't know. My opinion is still that when you're starting a business, if that's what you choose to do, if you're going to say, I'm going to be the owner of this business, it starts with a sprint. It's not a marathon in the beginning. In my opinion, it has to start a sprint. And then you get to the point where you're like, okay, I'm paying the bills. I can't keep running at this rate. Now, how do I start slowing to a jog? But if you started a jog, I mean, I guess if you've got the time to slow build, but like, I don't know.
Well, there's a certain commonality I would see in those of us who are in these spaces, teaching, coaching, things like that, that there's just a fire. I had a
Mhm.
student ask me recently. I was in a giving a presentation. They said, how'd you build your business in the beginning? And I said, can you stick your foot up in the air? Let me see the bottom of your shoe. And I said, I burnt the rubber off my shoes by hitting the streets. And I'm
Mhm.
sure you did the same.
Mhm.
So I'm gonna pivot gears because
Yeah.
I want to find out about, because you're a powerful woman and a powerful human, but specifically you teach women and talk to them, obviously.
Mhm.
Because I'm reading this word here, stagnating questions.
Mm.
What are the most common things that you get asked to advise on for women chiropractors specifically?
So I see a lot of people that started a business that shouldn't have. So a lot of their questions, whether, I mean, there might be a lot, I'm very like direct and to the point. So a lot of the questions may be kind of beating around the bush that they're just unhappy. They're unhappy because they're feeling like they're not enough of a chiropractor. They're not seeing enough people. And this enough is kind of based on what every single chiropractor sets their standards are on, like, well, I'm not to 1,000 a week yet. So like, like,
That's a
um,
that's a high standard.
yeah, yep. we got to like 700 a week, and it was still just wasn't enough. It just wasn't enough. And so I think that however they phrase their questioning, that's kind of what it's coming back to, is they are just constantly feeling like they're self-judging, and the joy is not there. They chose this profession. Chiropractic is a calling. Like, there are so many not better, easier ways to make money, even within healthcare. Like, dentist. I had to cancel a dentist appointment last week, kind of on the last minute, and it got rescheduled 7 months. And I'm like, damn, that's a wait list.
Yeah, totally.
Props.
Like, yeah, I can't even get into like getting your
Right.
teeth clean
Right.
for like 6
Nobody even
months. I
likes
know.
the
Yeah.
dentist.
No, I know.
Like,
I
and
know, but
so
everybody goes. You don't not go. Like, I
you don't
didn't
have to
go for like
educate
6
on
months. I was like, dude,
pediatric dentistry.
like my teeth are like just not clean. I was like, all right,
Yep.
craziness. So,
Yep.
so like the most common questions you're getting from women, if I'm hearing you correctly, is like people who've like started a business, but now they're like, they hit this wall, like, holy crap, I can't even
This
run
isn't
this
fun.
business because it's,
This
yeah,
isn't fun.
right.
That's
The
what it
joy
is.
is sucked out. But do you find that, like, does the fun come out because the lack of passion, or is there like a skill set or a knowledge base that isn't achieved or learned?
So I've given this speech a couple times. Are you familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs?
Of course. Yeah.
Okay. So, for those that aren't familiar with it, and I have a terrible memory, so without my PowerPoint, basically at the bottom of the triangle is where we all start. This is like our most survival, like, food, shelter.
Breath.
Yes.
Yeah.
Then starts to become, or no, I think shelter is like second, right? Like, it's literally
Well, yeah,
like
you
food
gotta
and
breathe.
water and breath.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then becomes shelter, then starts to become like community and relationships. Then, at the very top is ultimate fulfillment and happiness. So I think chiropractors, we kind of come about the profession. We're all, like, most of us feel called in one way or another to choose chiropractic, right? And so we kind of start in chiropractic school with that at the top of the triangle of like self-fulfillment. This is fantastic. And then chiropractic school starts, and you kind of get thrown to the bottom of the triangle of like, oh, this is hard. And you're in the survival mode. Then you graduate. Then you're like, I need to make money. Like, you are still in survival mode because you're like, I owe how much? Like, I have to make money. So when your brain is on, I have to make money in order to survive. Like, so many chiropractors. And then if they start a business, like, all right, so your business is just starting to do well, and you're joining the chamber and you're paying your bills, and maybe you're bringing on another associate. And then anybody who runs any business knows that, like, you're just one email away from a bad day. Like, you're just like, everything is great. And then you're like, you're getting audited.
Or one lawsuit, or
Yes.
one
And
FedEx envelope. Yeah, I get it.
so,
Yeah.
like, there's no electricity at the clinic. Okay. Like, there's just so many just different ways that you can just be sucked back down into problem solving mode, into survival mode of like, how are we going to replace that associate who gave us 4 days notice? How are we going to, our clinic, like, there's all of these things. What are we going to do about this audit? Am I going to have to close my doors? Whatever it is, being an entrepreneur really has you kind of living in the bottom of the triangle of that Maslow's hierarchy of needs a lot. You're in survival mode a lot. And it's a special kind of freak who gets high off that. Like,
when I look at it as grit too. There's lots of different, like, you got to have mental grit, physical grit, spiritual grit, like, to get through those times. So what do you do? Like, what's if you can, because you're my advisor today. You're coaching me today. So what do I do? Like, how do I get out of this burnout? Male, female, whatever. We can, because I'm just looking at you as a powerful human that I want to learn from with experience.
So I would say there's really two routes that we need to go. So the first one is that we have to really figure out, like, do you want the big, massive clinic? The bigger the clinic, the more the issues. So like a lot of people are chasing a dollar amount and they're exhausted by the clinic, like what it's taking to get to that. Or they're building maybe not necessarily a dollar amount, but a lifestyle, right? But also maybe they're not. So like some clinic owners just need to calm down. I was talking to someone the other day who was just beating herself up, just this shame cycle. She's been in practice 10 years. She's a solopreneur, no CA, super low overhead, and she only collects $350,000 a year.
Mm.
And I'm like, well, how much of that do you get to keep? And she's like, well, a lot because, but I'm only seeing like 75 to 100 people a week. And I'm like, girl, you're making like 300 grand and you are like judging yourself because and so like so many people, it's like, okay, hey,
Like the
if
numbers
you,
are skewed in her brain,
what are
but when
you
you look at the
doing?
P&L, you
You're
look at the
doing
P&L, she's
great.
doing really damn well.
Yes.
Yeah, totally.
Like you're doing
Yeah.
great. There are
Yeah.
clinics seeing 3 times as many people as you that aren't collecting that. And
So did
so
she
like,
fire you? She fire you as a coach immediately or no?
right? No,
That was
no, she
that
was
was a
super
one
happy.
session.
It's
All
the
right, good.
mindset shift.
Yeah.
So some people just need to clean up their profitability.
Yeah.
Like start doing some numbers and going like, okay, what do you want here? Why do you want it? Because there can just be a more joyful practice or way to run a practice that, is yours, uniquely yours. And you're not chasing what chiropractic as a society has said should fulfill you. So the other thing that I'll say to people a lot more too, is so this is another big platform of mine that I think I'm going to step more into in 2024. And I'm being called to talk about this more is we have glorified starting your own clinic way too much. And I think that people need to be associates more. Like,
Well, it's a really, I'm gonna just
yeah,
not pin it, but I really want to talk about this because what I've
yeah,
found is that, I came out of school like ready to open a clinic and I did not. I worked for someone for a year to learn and make mistakes on somebody else's dime
yeah.
and learn. And then I opened my clinic and also did worked on the side as well. And I've heard this a lot in our profession that chiropractors eat their young.
Yeah, we got to let go of that. The millennials are, so here's what's kind of happened with that is like, I wasn't around for the like times where apparently associates were making only like 35,000. Like I wasn't, it just wasn't happening yet. And so what unfortunately is a problematic is that the business owners, the clinic owners hiring can't keep up with the rate at which chiropractic school is inflating tuition. So like if you were 15 years ago hiring an associate, they were coming out, I think, I don't know, somewhere around like $100,000 or less
Wow.
in student loan debt.
Right, right.
And so like, I don't know, maybe 15 years ago, I was just like a young 20-year-old. Oh, shoot, I was in chiropractic school. I wasn't even that young. I'm getting to that stage where I'm like, oh, well, that was 30 years ago. Anyway, so like,
Just
I
keep
don't
tapping.
know how what like inflammation, inflation and all of that has
It is
happened.
inflammation too. It's like inflammation of society. Yeah, I get it.
Yes.
Inflation.
So
Okay, so
like maybe,
now students are coming out with like $300,000 debt. So
yes,
it's so
yes.
3x, right?
And so
So
it's
three
like
times.
now I have to technically, like if we start kind of doing some of the math of like, okay, they came out at 100 and they were only getting paid 40. Okay, that sounds like a raw deal. Like 40 is not enough, but now they're coming out at 300 and they should be getting 120. And I'm like, whoa, okay, hold up. Did the cost that I can charge a patient increase 3x during that time? In fact, it didn't,
No, that stayed the same.
because the 80, like the Mercedes, and a lot of it's going down. Like there are clinics that are in major metropolitan areas that are charging $30 an adjustment because that's what they have to do in their mind to compete for someone to pay cash. And it's like, no, the price of an adjustment is actually like almost going down. And so the clinic owners are really in a pickle right now because we don't want, first of all, you can't get an associate at 50 grand anymore. Like you just can't.
Yeah, yeah.
The other thing is I think we need, this is so my opinion. Like, I think that the eat your own really came from unclear bonus structures. And so what ended up happening is they said, like, if you come in and build my clinic, you could make this much. But then they came in, they didn't build it, they whatever, who knows what happened. And then they only made that base amount that was
Right.
menial, 30 grand, whatever it is.
Well, not
And so,
we're selling our associates. I'm not really saying we, but they're
yeah,
being sold on false premises almost.
yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the
Pretenses.
eat your own really came from. Was it wasn't they were told they were going to get this salary and that's just how it was going to be. I think that it was base plus commission, but either the commission, like in order to get a commission was so unreasonable, or air quotes, I don't know, or unclear. You're still hiring a student. Like maybe the docs were super clear and they're like, yeah, maybe you didn't burn rubber. Like you could have if you would have showed up to work. So anyway, so then my generation comes in and the eat your own really screwed us into feeling like we could give a base plus commission offer without that person going, you're just trying to scam me. And so we now, a lot of us feel like we have to give a straight salary, guaranteed salary. So then I'm like, okay, sure. I have docs that are like, I'm paying this dude $110,000 salary. I'm barely making that as the owner because of the like
Y and Z
staff that
overhead.
yeah.
Yeah.
And they think they should be making 150 to 200. And it's so like, so now when you offer this pure salary, because we feel like that's what we have to do, because a previous like there's this like, oh, you're trying to trick me by
What happened?
only
What
giving.
happened? I'm sorry I'm cutting you off, but I'm like, this is
No.
crazy because like what happened to like not just give me the salary, but like earn it by thumping spines and putting, and going out
Mm-hmm.
and hustling. I think a lot of it comes down to self-awareness. Like I'm seeing chiropractors who are like, no, like you're not a business owner minded or a
Mm-hmm.
business builder, you're a clinician. So there's certain levels of
Right.
pay that should be associated with that if you're just a clinician versus building a business versus an entrepreneur.
Yeah. And what I do see as the issue in defense of the associate is they just go, well, if I have to do the work to build the clinic, I will just build my own clinic then. So like everything's kind of in between, right? Like the pendulum swings one way. And so like and I haven't figured out really I haven't figured out the
Right.
solution
This
yet.
this might be my old man advice, my older,
No,
wiser self,
no.
speaking to young
Yeah.
chiropractors out there. And I don't want to downplay anybody's capabilities, clinical, business, spiritual, entrepreneur, all that, but there is there are so many tangible and intangibles to running a business that have nothing to do with being a chiropractor.
Mhm.
Like you said, the audits, hiring, firing, overhead, leases, scaling, all those things are what it takes to build and run a business, as you know.
Mhm.
And I'm going to just throw this out there, like young chiros who are listening to this, get your feet wet on somebody else's dime
Yes.
first. Yeah.
Yes. And like, especially choosing who you're going to go work for. So, like, there are chiropractors out there paying $1,500 a month for coaching. They're
Right.
starting up and they're paying big dollars for coaching. Whereas, like, you could work 2 years for someone that's built the thing that you want to build and
Right.
learn the lessons while they're paying you,
Yeah.
so
I
it
like
is
that.
just finding out like, okay, I do think that we need to get away from the pure salary because it doesn't make sense as a business. And oh God, I don't want to piss off anybody like young. There's an entitlement that a lot of chiropractic clinic owners are seeing in their associates who have a straight salary because it's like, do you understand how math works? Like, I know you feel like you should make $150,000 I know you feel that because you're working really hard. But I can't pay, like, I don't have that. I don't like, you would be making more than me or whatever it is. Like the profitability is not there. You're spending too much time. You're not seeing enough patients. Like, do the math, John. Like, And so when there's no, when an associate doesn't have to do any math to figure out their income, they just get to be like, all based on like, I'm working really hard, so I think I deserve more. And it's like, yeah, but this is a business like, and a business needs to be run on math.
Yeah, in economics, yes.
Yeah. And so
And
I
you have
think
to
that we
see,
need
you
to
have to
return a
see
little bit.
enough bodies. Yeah. So there's obviously some more conversations that need to be had. I think you and I are on the
Yeah.
same page
Yeah.
here that it's hard work, it's grit, it's also self-awareness,
Mm-hmm.
on both sides,
Yeah.
right? So this is it's a good topic, but I want to spin topics for a second
Yeah. Let's do it.
because yeah, let's talk about relationships.
Okay. I love
Because I'm intrigued.
relationships.
I'm like a relational neuroscience geek, so I don't want to go into the neuroscience here because that may
Okay,
bore
good.
some, but we can. If you want. Like, how do you navigate these waters? You're married, your husband and you
Mm-hmm.
work together. Did he work in the clinics also?
He's not in the clinics, but he was a consultant for a Fortune 100 club,
Okay.
business, whatever, you know what I mean?
It's a
And
club, it's like a
it's a
special club
club.
anyway, right?
It's a club.
To be in
Right.
that
Yeah.
level?
Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
So he was a consultant with a background in finance and marketing.
Okay.
And, we had 2 kids at the time, and we were looking at starting our second clinic and bringing on a third associate. And so it was like something like the children need something. And then also I needed him working on the
On the
business, like
business.
working
Yeah.
on the business. And so we decided to make that switch. So he's like 75% working and 25, like he's the person who also just makes our household run. I will say I love him dearly. He probably, but like there's no cleaning. He does not clean. He makes sure he makes
That's
sure
outsourced. Does he outsource that at least?
no,
You don't let him
to our
outsource it?
kids.
That's your thing? Oh,
Yeah.
okay. All right.
No,
Well,
our
that's
kids are not
outsourcing.
old enough. Our kids are not old enough, that kind of, but like, listen, he makes sure that like somebody's there when the kids are off the bus and things like that. So like,
Got it.
um, so what we found is that running a business, whether you are a male or female, is a very masculine energy.
Yes.
And so one of the things that like sometimes I rewrite my bio every time I send it to someone because like it just like whatever I'm in the mood to say. Um, and one of the things I'll say is like I'm a recovering alpha male. Now I haven't said that in a while because it's starting to get like offensive to the males. But like what I mean by that is anybody who's running a business carries a lot of masculine energy because that's what's required of a successful business. Masculine energy has nothing to do with the gender. It has to do with timelines and to-do lists and like the masculine energy is
Direction and
very,
magnitude.
yes,
Yes.
vision, steps to get there, goals, like that is all super, super masculine.
Get shit done.
Get shit done. And like I am a huge Jordan Peterson fan. Do you know who Jordan Peterson is? Yeah. So
Yeah.
like I think, and this is where I was kind of saying of like, well, back in 2019, I felt like that's what women did is we started things for the women. And now it's this like now we kind of all need both of these messages where it's like there's nothing wrong with the masculine energy.
So
Like
how do you define feminine energy?
so feminine energy is not natural for me because I am a to-do list type of person. This is ease. This is flow. This is breathing and accepting that these problems in your business are there to teach you that there is a bigger picture going on, that you don't have control. It is all of that. And there's also, so okay, we won't get too kinky here or anything like that, but like just like so many women that are living in the masculine, they don't have any sex drive. Well, and so like there's also this thing where it's
Well,
like,
like women
yeah,
in a
because
female, like in a female body, right?
yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes. That's what I
Yeah.
meant. If I didn't say, like they don't have that. And it's like, well, because you're not balancing the feminine energy that your body, and we're going to get out of this conversation real fast so I don't piss off people, but like was, and so Devin Vrana, who's a powerhouse female, very similar to me, very driven, like we both acknowledge, like it's very easy for us to pick up that masculine energy and run a business and do it well. But like sometimes women who lean masculine, we have to do things to increase our feminine energy. So like she'll say she purposely wears earrings and dress a certain way. Like, and it's something that
flowy dresses and
yes, like
dancing.
it pisses me off as a woman, but like I've had women on the podcast talking about like some of the keys for women to balance that masculine energy is like stupid shit, like put on lipstick and dress. And I'm like, you're telling me to put on lipstick? And it's like, yes. And I'm like, I don't like that answer.
I got to keep track of time, but I could continue to dive into this. The way I look at it is like I live in Maryland, DC area, and I've spent a lot of time on the Potomac River and hiking there. So the river banks are your masculine energy and the water that flows through is feminine.
Yeah.
And they don't exist without one another. So they are in union. And that's the ultimate spiritual goal. If we're going to get into this conversation, that's where we're all going is to blend this energy. I was just reading something and I knew it would come into this conversation about emotional literacy for men, and meaning like, can I express what I'm feeling inside without being called a name for it or sensitive? I'm going to keep it relatively clean here, but I've been called.
My head knew which one.
Yeah. I was like a jock and a youngest of three brothers. So I've been called all, and I've dealt with that stuff, but I've done a lot of work on my own emotional literacy. Is that something that, and what I mean by emotional literacy is like a vocabulary to explain and feel what a feeling is. And it comes not, and as a chiropractor, even understanding my own body and how a feeling can come through. How does this play out, in your relationship with your husband, balancing these dynamics back and forth in business?
Yeah. Oh yeah, because that was like your original question that I don't think I answered. Right. Good job, host.
Well, we're in the ADHD generation too, aren't we? Or is that just that's just a chiropractic thing, I think.
I think it's an entrepreneur multitasking thing. Okay. So what we have, so like I'm going to bring it kind of back to, so a marriage, a man needs to feel like the man and the woman needs to feel like the woman in order for, in my opinion, a intimate marriage where your souls are connecting. Like there needs to be balance, of course, but like with all the different things that marriages deal with, like that's kind of what it comes back to is like, if I'm functioning like the man, and my husband is functioning like the woman, I'm not attracted to him and he doesn't feel sexy. Right. And so
there's
like
no polarity.
Yeah. And so like, this is the thing that like through therapy and reading and this and that is like, it's okay that like I carry the masculine roles in like finances and this and that. But like when it comes to our marriage, I need to respect my husband and I need to feel cared for. And it's much easier, I would think. I've never lived this life that I'm aware of, but like I would imagine back in the day, it was a lot easier for a woman to feel cared for when the man was the one bringing home the paycheck and she was the one like putting on dresses and making dinner.
But then the scales tipped because there was not because there's no reason why women, and this is my opinion, but I don't think women should be paid less or less positions or less accolades. Like we're all intelligent humans and capable. It's based on capabilities, not gender. But these energies are important for romantic relationships, which you're talking about in marriage, but
long-term relationships.
Yeah. Okay, cool. But it regardless, heteronormative, whatever, if there's two men and men, women and women, that's cool, in my opinion. But what about like, have you applied these dynamics to your business? Meaning like you're holding the container.
Oh God,
business. So
Oh
that
yeah.
because there's an intangible energy to running a business. And when the energy drops, you can feel it, right? And
Hmm.
sometimes it happens with a weak link. Sometimes it
Yep.
happens with people not like where does polarity fit into to running your business?
Well, so this is
Keeping us on
why,
relative track
yeah,
here
no.
on
So
business here.
this is why I, I mean, there's so much here. This is why the podcast is no longer like for women, is because men, in order to be the leader that they need to be, need to bring in that feminine energy into being a leader. So the women need to, they're like stepping into their masculine in the office and they're like crushing it and doing awesome, but then they maybe need to go like, hey, I need to bring this feminine energy into my household. And like, this is all just like, everybody, you do you. These aren't judgments, this is just
So let's
generalization.
I
But
want
like
to
the
dive into
men,
this like
yeah.
for specific reasons, like women bringing masculine energy in their practice, spreadsheets, direction,
Mhm.
vision,
They
holding
kick
space.
ass because they're
What is
natural.
it? So that those are like masculine qualities. Like let's just and for I'm not talking about males. I'm talking about
No.
masculine, feminine energy. These are
Mhm.
energy discussions here. So what does it look like for
Feminine leadership, that feminine
yeah,
energy
like
leadership. That, yeah, yep,
a
yes,
biological
yes.
male to bring in feminine energy to a
Did
business? What
you
does
have
that look
any
like?
idea this is what we
Yeah,
were going to talk about today, by the way?
I sort of
I
did. I
love
don't
it.
know. It's
Okay.
just because
Okay.
I love this topic. So
So, men, male leaders. So, we got this phrase toxic masculinity from an alpha male and all of these. Like, when you hear those terms, a lot of people can picture this like certain gender wearing a suit and he's a certain age and he's a certain race and he is yes, exactly, he's pointing his finger and he has, it's all of that, like you work and you fire them if they're not going to do the job and it's like you always win. And so
coffees for closers like that.
yes, yeah, yeah.
That's it.
So where we need to start seeing the balance is like feminine energy leadership in either gender shows up as listening. That's the big one. That's really the big one. It's observing your employees. It's trying to have a place where your employees feel safe to
Mm,
communicate with you.
yeah.
Um, it's
That's a
that
huge. We can
bringing
do a whole nother
empathy.
hour on
Yeah.
that
Yep.
on safety. So now empathy, yes.
Yep. Empathy, safety to communicate, listening. It's those soft, being able to handle, or so communication, communicating areas that need improvement from a place that is still empowering your employee. That's not the shaming them into becoming better. Like, so those are the areas in which we all, like, I started for the first 7 years of my practice, a very masculine boss. I would get mad. I would let them know this is underperforming. There's this. And like, because I didn't come in super feminine, like I just came in imbalanced. And so I had to work on like, okay, how do I have these conversations that I just want to be to the point? And like, that's the thing, is like sometimes when it comes to communication, like the masculine energy can be just candid,
Direct,
kind
incisive.
can,
Yeah.
but what we want is we want kind candor,
Mhm.
not just candor.
Unkind, mean. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, because there's
And
a big difference between like, and I'm going to even like say like this adaptive childhood behavior, because that's where like the unkindness or meanness comes from. If you can mature as a leader and still bring directness,
Mhm.
there's a level of maturity that allows us to get incisive about what needs to get done, yet hold the humanity for that person you're dealing with. Does that make sense?
That's exactly it. It's learning, it's holding that humanity. I love that, the way you said that, because a lot of times we're like, I only have this much time. This is what needs to get said. And so it's just like, I'm going to check you off my to-do list. I'm going to check this conversation because then I have other things coming. And so like for me, and I think I fall somewhere on the like non-neurotypical spectrum, for sure, because like for me, if I have to have a hard conversation with an employee, I'm just like, oh my God, it just takes so much more energy. It takes
Yeah, it
more
does.
energy. It takes more
And
time.
courage, like to actually
Yes.
get the crap
Vulnerability.
out of you. Yes. Yeah.
That's another one but we then now need to allow, because, okay, yeah, us women, like, I love this conversation so much. Now all of a sudden, yeah, we're talking about like, yeah, we want a vulnerable, empathetic man, but like, that's what we say. That's what we say. But then, like, there's not a ton of room in society.
Can he chop wood and be
Can he
still?
also chop wood and cry?
Yes. Yeah.
Like, oh,
And be
now's not a
still.
sexy
And
time to be
yeah.
crying. Like, and so that's where what you kind of said of like, we also need to allow space for this is what we're saying we want from our male leaders. Okay, then we need to hold space, and like men to men, you have to hold, like, I hope that those conversations are happening in some of these like male mastermind, mountain men, whatever their clever name. I hope those conversations are happening where like we need to have safe space for a spiritual connection and
There,
like,
there are spaces.
yeah.
They're not common, but there are specific. We can. That's a whole nother topic
Yeah.
that I can
And
share
one
with you.
I can't even speak to
Yeah.
because I've never been in it. And so that's why I have men reaching out on the podcast, because they haven't found it yet. And they're like, hey, like, I really resonate with what you're saying. And so, yeah.
They need the support. Well, we
Mhm.
have a lot that we can, we're running up on our time because I want to pull on the shame thread, but I have to put a pin in us for now.
God, I could talk about shame for so
Oh, I
long.
know.
Yeah.
Me too. It runs rampant in the way that we approach chiropractic as well.
Mhm.
I'm not into shaming patients, like not into weight shaming or injury shaming or even pain shaming, because there's another way around it. It's like those things exist and they're
Mhm.
impacting people's health, but we'll save that
Okay.
for another
Yeah. Sounds good.
comedic sleigh. This wasn't as comedic, but it did go. Well, I'm hoping it went deeper than just the surface. So,
Yeah.
you're awesome. Like it's an honor to get to know you, and I look forward to working with you again in the future and really getting your power out there, because it's needed. You have a cool unity about you that is that masculine and feminine energy that provides running a good damn profitable business and be human at the same time,
Thank
and
you.
putting associates in their place too. So sorry,
And the next
associates. I
generation.
love you. I love you. I think it's important for all of us. I'm looking right at you, just to
Yeah.
look at everybody. Can we all just get along and communicate and really, and what it comes down to is amplifying this profession,
Mhm.
because it needs to grow. Our message in general needs to get out there. And there's too much disparity and confusion between science and philosophy, and what we have to offer is magic. So please continue slaying the day. And it's been awesome talking to you. We will do this again. And for those of you who like these conversations, we'll put all your contact info, but subscribe to Lauren's podcast, throw some good questions, biological males, biological females, whatever gender, whatever
We might
sexual
have offended a
preference,
lot of people today, Brian.
whatever.
It is possible.
We meant no offense. I'm speaking
No.
for you also, because we meant just to have a good, deep conversation here.
That
So
is the
thank you.
number one line that I include in the bottom of almost every single bio is, if you are easily offended, she apologizes in advance. Literally, it's the way I end most of my bios when I send them out. Like, sorry.
I couldn't think of it. Like I love the name of your podcast. So thank you for what you're doing, and I look forward to working together again.
Thank you so much, Brian.